When I read the first book, it hadn't yet been published, and I had no idea that it would become this.
The books were huge, and it was quite a daunting thing, because obviously you want to get it right for everyone.
I was willing to do anything. If they wanted me to sing and dance, I would have tried that, if it meant that I had the opportunity to direct the movie.
In those days, I was just a kid who had no idea what she was doing.
I was proud I got a part, and it wasn't like I got the part of Harry Potter. It was like, you know, I've got a part. I had no idea what I was getting into.
Roll, please. Rolling. Speed.
Creating the world of Harry Potter. Take one.
Set! And action!
When you begin the process of making any film, there are innumerable decisions that one has to make. Decisions about the script, who your director is going to be, who are going to play the parts, who your cameraman and production designer is going to be, who your costume designer and visual effects supervisor is going to be. All those decisions are absolutely pivotal to making the film that you as a producer and the director's director want to make. And I feel we've been very lucky that at the very beginning that we made some pretty good decisions that have held us in good stead as the series has developed.
The first day of filming was at the train station, and I just remember being incredibly nervous. I didn't sleep the night before. That night, I felt all of the intense pressure of what I was about to do. And I thought, if I fail, everyone in the world will hate me forever. So it's not that much pressure. Do the sunglasses help with contacts?
Yeah, I'm going to take them off at the last minute.
Excellent. That's good. That's a good idea. Keep it on at all times.
I will.
Hi, how you doing, Doug?
We filmed the last scene of the first film, the kids saying goodbye to Hagrid. It was incredibly exciting. I was like, oh my goodness, here we are.
165, take one, A and B cameras, common mark. Set!
Okay, and background action!
Action!
A lot of what happened on that first day is a blur, but I remember getting to the set very, very early, probably an hour and a half before I had to be there, just so I could be more awake and more alert. I felt the earlier I got there, the better chance I had of creating some sort of magic in the scene. And when I saw Dan that first day, he was very nervous as well.
It was slightly nerve-wracking.
I was terrified, mainly because that day there were loads and loads of extras. And it was the prospect of them all knowing who I was, which is quite frightening. I'm like trying to blend in. Where is he?
Door. The door.
It was so long since you last reminded me.
All right, once again, right away.
I'd done a little bit of acting before, and Emma and Rupert have done nothing.
So I listened to him.
Yeah.
Walk in.
Never stepped on a film set in my life, never acted professionally before, and then you walk onto this enormous set with hundreds of crew.
It's not easy. I thought it would be so much easier. I thought it would be, you know, sort of a couple of takes.
Good, Rupert.
Okay, and background.
I remember being quite nervous from the first scene. None of us had really that experience when we first started, and it was quite a scary world to come into.
My first day I was in Gothland on location at the train station, and I was really nervous, but it turned out it was quite cool.
Come on, Dan.
We all go to the other end of the platform. Dan,
Dan.
Rupert, please.
That first day, we were trying to get Dan's eyes to be green because that's what they are in the book, and Dan was wearing contact lenses. But he was allergic to them, and ultimately we made the decision to remove them. For the first day, we tried to work through it. So for the last scene, when he's saying goodbye to Hagrid, you can see that almost his eyes tearing and his eyes a little bit swollen.
Thanks, Hagrid.
And it feels like he's about to cry. He probably was, but he never complained, and we removed the contacts, and he's never had green eyes since.
In the book, Hermione has buck teeth. We were obsessed with making Emma more Hermione-like. So in the very first scene that we shot in the film, Emma is wearing fake teeth.
Feels strange to be going in, doesn't it?
But we realized after the first day of dailies that we could not do that for the entire course of the picture. And we were able to cut it in a way that you really can't tell, but they're there. If you look closely enough, she's wearing false teeth in that last scene to make her more Hermione-like.
Come on, Harry.
It's almost like you want to be down here over Hagrid, and then so we're making more of a definite move as Harry comes towards us up over.
On the first day of filming, it actually sunk in that I'm playing Harry Potter, and I realised, okay, this isn't a dream anymore. This this is real life.
Early on in the process, I felt that the picture needed to be purely British. And so the entire casting process began with thousands of casting tapes we received. And then we met every potential child actor, any kid who had done a school play and wanted to be in Harry Potter, we met in England.
I was about 9 when I started auditioning. I was already a very big fan of the books. When this rumour started going around my school that there were these auditions for Harry Potter and they were coming to school.
My school teacher, called Mr. Hancock, who's now left, got, I think, a letter saying if there's any kids in school that you think could act in the Harry Potter film, would you mind them auditioning? And then I had to go through a lot of auditions.
When I was reading the books, I always felt quite a connection to Ron.
I was watching Newsround, and they told us how you could audition for the Harry Potter film. And they said that you could send in a form and a photograph of yourself. So I did that and sent it in there, and a month went by, and still nothing happened. So I was on the internet and found out this one boy sent in a video of himself reading out a little script in the book. So I put together this little video thing and sent that off, and then I got an audition.
It was quite strange, because especially in like the canteen, there was like 20 other ginger people that sort of looked quite similar to me. So it was quite scary as well, because I've never auditioned before. It was quite a new thing as well.
We narrowed down each role to about 4 or 5 kids that we screen tested. So in terms of Emma Watson, she was phenomenal. The camera loved her. She had Hermione's sense of humor. She was sharp as a whip for an 11-year-old girl.
We had a couple of screen tests where I had to learn lines. No, I don't say they were hard. No, they were quite enjoyable, actually.
Seeing Emma Watson's screen test, we were all in agreement that Emma was Hermione. For Rupert, for Ron Weasley, same sort of situation happened. He immediately popped off the screen. Rupert is a very shy kid, but he had this devilish, mischievous quality, and he had a face that I've never seen before. I mean, he was just unique, and his face was a wealth of all these emotions. He had a wonderful sense of humor, but also a real sense of soul. He really felt like he was one of the Weasley children, and we all fell in love with him for Ron Weasley.
So we sort of found our Ron and Hermione, but we were becoming increasingly nervous because we had a film called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and we didn't have Harry Potter. We began looking in November of 1999, before we had a director, and it was quite scary because here we were in July and we were shooting in September and we didn't have Harry.
There was a sense of pressure because everybody was talking about it. The press was writing about who's going to play Harry Potter. The studio was constantly on the phone with us. Have you found him yet? Have you found him yet? Our casting director was going crazy trying to find him.
It was interminable, you know, looking and looking and looking and not finding.
After we had looked at countless tapes and seen countless kids, I remember popping in a tape of David Copperfield, and I saw Dan's scene, and I thought, this kid really has the potential to be Harry Potter. But there was really a general reluctance from the parents.
My mum and dad both went, no, you know, that's far too much of an upheaval of his life, so he you know, that we can't let that happen.
And one night I went to the theatre with Steve Clovis.
David Heyman was sat in the row in front of us at a production of a play called Stones in His Pockets.
I looked up and there was Alan Radcliffe, who was an agent at ICM who I knew. And he said, oh, how are you? Great. And then next to him was Marcia, his wife, and the boy at the end was his son, Daniel. So went, sat down in the row in front, and I paid very little attention to the play. I was always looking at over my shoulder at the boy behind, and he just had this quality which was an old soul in a young body.
I noticed David Heyman turning round to me every so often. I was like, who's that man? And then, in the interval, he came up, him and Steve Clovis came up, and they introduced themselves.
My dad just went, okay, maybe, he saw it as a sign. Like, I don't believe in that kind of stuff particularly, but they took it as a sign that it was somehow meant to be, and so they let me audition.
And action.
That's a dragon egg.
What is it?
That's what that is.
What is that?
A dragon egg.
I remember I auditioned. There was this whole scene about a dragon egg in the first film. I think Chris Columbus broke a real egg.
Oh, uh-oh.
And made me laugh.
Dan's screen test was amazingly charming and soulful, and he was inexperienced as an actor, but there was one thing that Dan had that you couldn't teach anyone, which was this sort of haunted quality.
If you heard your mum screaming like that, you're just about to be killed, you wouldn't forget in a hurry.
I just saw it in his eyes in more serious moments, and that was the moment I think that we all felt when we saw that screen test to hire Dan as Harry Potter.
Excellent.
Dad comes in and says, I've just spoken to David Heyman and you've got the part.
And I cried, and I was in the bath.
Why did you cry?
I cried with happiness.
So we ended up with our 3, and I don't think we could have done better.
The 3 of them together were just perfect. They really felt like the characters had jumped from the book.
I checked this out first term for a bit of light reading.
This is lying.
Shut up.
The first time I actually met Rupert and Emma, I think we'd done a screen test together, but I still didn't know who'd got the part. And then when it was announced we got the part was the first time we met properly.
This is Dan and Rupert on the day that they got the job. We brought all 3 of them here, and they came into my office.
The last time we came in, I thought it was going to be another audition, but they took us to the producer's, David Heyman's office.
David Heyman tried to go into a great big paragraph, and then Chris Columbus just came out with it and said that we want to cast her as Ron and Hermione in the film.
And I just stood there looking blank at them for about 5 minutes until it really sunk in. I was like, oh my God, I just stood there. Thought, no, this is all a dream, pinch me.
It was just a complete shock because it was just so unexpected, but it was just such a cool day.
Here's them being photographed on that first day.
I remember very little about it. I remember that Terry O'Neill, I believe, was the photographer who took the first photos of us, and he continually referred to us as the ginger boy, the one with glasses, and the girl, because of course nobody knew our names then.
I look back on those photographs now and I feel like that's a different person. I feel like I don't know that girl. It's really strange. So much has happened since that day.
When you're working with children, you have them for 9.5 hours a day. It's 3 hours for education, an hour for lunch, 15-minute breaks every hour. So ultimately, you end up shooting scenes with children for around 4 hours a day. That's not very much. And it necessarily means that our schedule is longer.
You know, the longest shoot I'd done was 11 weeks, and suddenly we were on for 11 months.
Set, and action!
I'll never forget just walking onto that set in kind of the middle of nowhere in northern England and just thinking, I've never been so nervous in all my life because, I mean, like, you've got the big steam train, you know, all the lights, hundreds of extras, hundreds of crew. So we kind of thought, oh, is this what every film's like, where you've got thousands of crew, or you know, like most films last about 6 weeks, not 9 months.
This way, first years, come on now!
Whoa!
I thought the kids all had acting experience because they seemed completely unfazed by... I mean, walking onto a big film set is a scary thing if you're expected to do something when they shout, go now. As an adult, it doesn't get any less scary, really, the first day. They just seemed completely cool to it all.
Did you say hey Hagrid a little earlier? As soon as he says hey Hagrid.
A little higher on the lamp, Robbie. And action! Right now, first years, this way.
Robbie Coltrane was Joe's idea, because we wanted somebody to play Hagrid who we knew who could be tough and dangerous, but at the same time was warm and vulnerable and very funny. And Robbie is all those things.
Right then, follow me.
There was just no question of not doing it. You knew it was, so long as they were true to the book, it was going to be wonderful.
All right, shooting. Okay, roll sound.
Okay, class, listen to me. Welcome to your first flying lesson. I want you to raise your hand over the broom.
For the flying lesson, I remember saying action, and half of the kids started performing. The other half of the kids are staring into space. We had to stop, and I said, you know, action means we start shooting. And I thought to myself, oh my, this is the beginning of a very long shoot.
So Peter, this is everybody's moving on action this time.
Rupert, go to your left. Other left.
I don't think any of the kids will disagree with me when I say that they were extremely inexperienced in terms of being on a film set and doing film acting.
We had to cast a lot of children for Harry Potter 1, and Chris and David were just as meticulous casting for students as the other roles. But actually, one of the great things was when we were auditioning, especially the children, you didn't have to explain any of the characters because they knew them better than I did.
I was just such a fan of the story. I wanted to dress up like a wizard and I wanted to go to Hogwarts, and I knew the best way to do that would be to get a part in the film. And it was nothing to do with my career at the time. It was just a little boy wanting to be in Harry Potter. When I first started, we shot a scene where Neville's broomstick takes off. And I'd read it in the script, but I don't know, I had no idea what to expect. You know, I'd never done anything like that in my life.
Hold on, let's start at the beginning, still rolling. Switch your hands. Matt, great. Remember to look to your right, look down, be really scared and hover.
To come and have stunt department put you in a harness and strap you to a broomstick, and then you're flying around on this roller coaster type thing.
Got?
And they call it work. It was brilliant.
All right, shooting the plate. Please stay back.
I remember the first time when we went on location. I think it was to Annick, and we were awful. That's really what I've got to think. I mean, we were messing around all the time. You just imagine having a massive group of 11-year-old kids just running about, trying to keep them controlled, and just feel bad for all the people. They're trying to make a film, and we thought we were on a holiday camp. We were having a great time.
Okay. All right, check the eight.
My great lament is that we don't really do many locations anymore.
There's a great deal more location in Harry Potter 1 and Harry Potter 2 than there is in 4, 5, 6 and 7. That's because in the beginning, the time we were given, we couldn't possibly build all this.
The first person hired was Stuart Craig, because this world had to be created.
Honestly, your first reaction is fear. I thought, oh my God, how can I possibly do this, really?
Starting with Stuart Craig was one of the best decisions that we made on those pictures, and Stuart's just a genius.
He really has brought Hogwarts and Joe's universe to life. It is his creation.
When we first began this whole series of films, Harry Potter 1, we met Joe Rowling and had loads of questions, masses of questions to ask. And this was, in fact, her layout, drawn at a hotel dining table of Hogwarts. All the major ingredients, the Dark Forest you see there, the castle, the Quidditch pitch, the Black Lake, Hogsmeade, everything is on there, the complete world. Without a little hand-drawn map, I would never have got to grips with it in the way that we did. It was the most terrific gift.
Boom! Goes up, up, and then back down, back over here. Then you're going too far up that way. Okay, cut.
Everyone working on the film was committed to finding a way to make the material not only cinematic, but also a magical, faithful retelling of the first book.
Hand out, Dan. Freeze in that position. Sean, same with you. Don't move. And action.
David Heyman was a wonderful collaborator and very passionate about the film. And I think that's why David and I got along so well. There was nothing else in our minds except making a great film.
Chris was incredibly good to me. I think he respected my passion for the material. He respected the fact that I was there before anybody. He respected that Joe and I had a very good relationship. But there are many people in his position who would have cast me aside. At that time, I was a young producer, and what the director said went. But Chris wasn't having any of that. Not only to keep me around, but he was very supportive. And I learned an awful lot from him.
David and I had the same vision for the films, and that vision being that the first film was more of this wonderful sort of rich version of Hogwarts, this storybook world that we were creating. Then as we got into Chamber of Secrets, the facade starts to chip away a little bit, and we got darker with each film.
That question of what is this world, what does it look like, you always start with the novel. Because J.K. Rowling talks about the great antiquity of the world, I immediately thought, where would you go on location? What exists from that era? Well, there were bits of Oxford and bits of Cambridge, some of those colleges, and also the great Gothic European cathedrals.
We were able to go to various churches and universities throughout England and create the whole world.
The creating of the castle carried with it this inherent problem of mixing real locations with bits that we had designed. Given that real locations are often disappointing, they're full of bits that don't quite fit the story that you're trying to tell.
So it's the blending of these two worlds, and I found that very difficult, and I think in some respects I have to say we failed. And I'm thinking specifically of the exterior of Hogwarts. When it was all put together, it didn't amount to a really successful, iconic silhouette, which is you want it to work on this kind of simple level. What has happened since then, on all the subsequent movies, we have slowly improved the silhouette of those things. We've taken away some of the real locations.
Annick was a featured part in one, is less. So Stewart has reshaped and rebuilt Hogwarts as the films have developed to become more to his liking, I think.
Rupert, hold your head up. Dan, eyes a little wider. He's gone. Look to them. Yeah. But this is important. This is about the sorcerer's stone. Just a little faster. Head up. Eyes wider. She's just told you he's gone. Action.
He's gone? But this is important. Yeah.
You gotta look to them. He's gone. Head up.
In the early days, I had to find a way wrangling these kids to deliver some sort of performance because they couldn't have been any greener.
It's a lot harder than everyone thinks. And there are 50 billion, trillion, million things going on at the same time that you have to think about, like hitting your marks, getting your line right at the right time, making sure you step into the light so that the face doesn't shadow you. All that kind of stuff.
He's gone? Now? But this is important. This is about the Philosopher's Stone.
Okay, still rolling. Hold your head up. When you find out that he's gone, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen, because that means you're dead.
In the first movie, I always, laughed and said we should put a camera on Chris, because what the kid's performance really was a reflection of what he was doing, what he was bringing out.
Stronger on he's gone. But this is important. Set and...
Should we go from he's gone?
Yeah, and...
He's gone? But this is important. This is about the Sorcerer's Stone.
Don't take a pause between this.
Okay,
yeah. Eyes wide, stronger. Action!
He's gone?
Chris was so wonderful with them. He often had to chin up Dan.
Head up, Dan. Head up, even higher.
Rupert, stop smiling.
No, don't smile.
Emma, look this way.
You guys should look at each other after he's gone, okay?
Okay.
Somebody said that the difference between children and children on a set is that children on a set actually do what you tell them to do.
That was no stranger Hagrid met in the village. It was Snape, which means he knows how to get past Fluffy.
And with Dumbledore gone...
Good afternoon.
Alan Rickman was so fantastic, I was freaked.
You want to be careful. People will think you're up to something.
I was constantly having to remind myself that it's only a film, it's only a film, it's only a film, it's only a film, nothing's real. But it was terrifying.
That is great.
Alan Rickman, to me, was always Snape because Joe Rowling showed me some early drawings. She'd done this sketch of Snape and looked just like Alan Rickman. He was a little reluctant because he has done this particular type of villain in the past, so he didn't want to be typecast as this villain. So David and I took Alan to dinner to convince him he had to play the role. And I remember the car ride through London with David driving, with Alan sitting in the front seat and me sitting in the back, and David almost got in a car accident. And I remember saying, David, don't kill us before Alan says no, because we just expected him to say no, but for some reason, 2 days later, he came back and said yes.
I don't think I had much choice in the matter. Lots of godchildren and nephews and nieces were not only excited, I think insistent.
He knows how to get past Fluffy.
And with Dumbledore gone...
Good afternoon. When you see this movie, you're not going to see all of these huge mechanics and the months of editing. You're just going to watch a close-up on two little boys and a little girl's face at the centre of the story, and unless that reads, the film won't work.
Dan, remember to enunciate. Keep your head up. Rupert, don't smile. And Emma, don't put your head out forward. Action!
A problem in the early days, and the problem all the kids had, was this sense of total delight at being there, so they could never stop smiling, even if it was a serious scene.
And action!
Me and Dan both had this giggling problem. And I remember Alan Rickman, the first one, told me to relax my face and just not think of anything. Sorry. Sorry. Didn't really work, to be honest. But, yeah, he tried.
Take 10, A camera.
B camera.
C camera.
Set.
Set and action.
In the early days, you might do 10 takes. You might be lucky to get the one you really wanted once.
What? What did I do?
Then they might have to go off to school and you may not get it again. So we would run 3 and 4 cameras.
Hey, camera.
Okay, guys, I don't want you to see her. You know she's coming, okay? Just be reading and studying. Dan, you reading?
Yeah.
It was important for me to always have a camera on one of them in case one of them was coming down off of a chocolate rush, or they lost their energy, or they were getting tired, or they were looking into the camera. God knows, there were a million things going on.
And guys, you're interested, Rupert, you shouldn't be laughing at the end when you find out that Dan's gonna potentially be killed by Slade.
And the key was, for cinematographer John Seal, was shooting multiple cameras, because I never knew when the kids were going to deliver the performance that I needed.
The Sorcerer's Stone.
Okay, guys, you're laughing.
So if you look at the first film, you see it's very cutty. In other words, we cut to a close-up of a kid, and then I cut away to someone else. We were incapable of getting an entire scene in context. So John's philosophy of shooting 3 cameras basically helped me to obtain a performance here and a performance here, unlike any other way I would shoot a movie. It's almost documentary style, and John really knew how to do that. And I had always admired his work, and this was a really golden opportunity for me to work with him.
And action!
The overall look of the film that Chris and I talked about was retaining a magic of Hogwarts, and then, of course, the adventures within it. We wanted the drama that is written into the books. We didn't want to lose that. We didn't want to make it too sort of glossy and open. So it was a very delicate balance between making it a reality film and a magical film. And I hope we've done it.
We made it.
All right, guys, I want everyone to focus on Professor McGonagall. Listen to everything she says.
What we needed from McGonagall was someone that you were intimidated by, but someone who had a real sense of warmth and heart. And that's exactly who Maggie is. And I thought this is perfect for McGonagall.
And move, Maggie.
You meet her in the beginning of the film. She's in the scene where they're walking up the stairs, and she was intimidating. I mean, she was intimidating to the crew because she's so smart. She's so brilliant. And the kids could sense that. But that was good. At that point, she was the disciplinarian.
Everybody should be looking at her in awe of her.
I have to say, a lot of good ideas came from Dame Maggie from our first fitting. She wanted to be Scottish. Her name is Scottish, so the whole idea of making her witch's hat more like a Scottish tam, that was actually her idea. She had some great ideas. I tried to keep all the kids really classically British boarding school. Funnily enough, J.K. Rowling said that the kids did not wear uniforms. So we ended up testing Daniel in regular clothes with a wizard gown and uniforms, and everybody went for the uniforms because graphically it was much prettier.
Devin, take a little tiny step to your right. Good. Excellent. Good. Dan, can you see me?
No.
I'm here, I swear.
Okay, there you go.
I was really going for less of a contemporary look, because I always wanted the film to have some sort of timeless quality. So their I remember their wardrobe test, dressing them as these adorable little English school children, and they looked amazing.
Chin and head up, Dan. Everybody set, Rupert. Focus, and action!
It's true then. The same in the train. Harry Potter has come to Hogwarts.
Tom was probably, out of everyone in those early days, the most experienced actor.
This is Crab Goyle. And I'm Malfoy.
I'd done a few films before and a few TV things, and I was purely up there because my agent had said you should go.
Did you read the books to start with?
I had no idea what it was, no idea. I went for an audition for it, and everyone was talking about it.
I remember one of the first things they asked at the interview is, what is your favourite scene in the book? And there was a row of us, about 7 of us, and of course I hadn't read it, so I just, the guy next to me said, oh, Gringotts, I love the trolls. So I just said, yeah. Same as this guy, yeah, I love the trolls, they're brilliant. And straight away, Chris saw straight through that, and I'm pretty sure that gave him a little internal laugh, so that could have helped, I don't know.
At one point, when we were trying to find who's going to play Harry Potter, I thought Tom was so good, let me put some makeup on him and put a scar on him and a black wig and see if he could do Harry Potter. So we tested Tom as Harry Potter in that succession of screen tests. But we realized after the screen test we felt was better for Draco Malfoy.
Out of the whole book, I'd rather to be Malfoy than anyone else, because I get to be a baddie.
Rehearsal.
Back again, Harry?
My first scene with Terrace, he came on and he introduced himself. That was quite scary at first because there are quite a lot of people who've worked with him before. And you've heard things and you're like, oh, okay. But when he gets on set, you're like, okay, you're quite frightening. Yeah. I'm gonna go over here.
I do not need a cloak to become invisible, Harry.
When it came time to cast Dumbledore, we needed a father figure who had a sense of mischief and had a twinkle in his eye. So we thought Richard would be a perfect Dumbledore.
Let me give you a clue.
And Richard, by the way, is my godfather. My father used to be his agent. He was his best friend. So Richard was a very significant part of my life growing up. And he was a true eccentric, a real character, a larger-than-life character. And that was what you wanted Dumbledore to be.
Most what? Most desperate desires of the heart. Well done, Richard.
I remember Dave and I going to dinner with Richard, and he was reluctant to play the role.
I must admit that it took me months to say yes to it. I wasn't necessarily very keen on doing it.
What really sold it was not me. I wish I could claim such power, but no, it wasn't me. It was the fact that his granddaughter, Ella, read the books.
My granddaughter called me and said, Papa, she said, if you don't play Dumbledore, I will never speak to you again. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. She's wrapped up in it, you know, and I love the book. I love the script. It's beautifully written and beautiful dialogue in it. I see that you, like many before you, have discovered the delights of the mirror of Narrated.
In hiring a writer, we wanted somebody who could capture the spirit of Joe's writing. And so I sent the book out to a few writers. But I had around, I can't remember, 7 first editions of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which I sent out to many writers who passed on it.
Each one of those books is worth like $25,000 now, so the screenwriters who didn't do the book ended up getting paid anyway.
We hired Steve Clovis, who at the time I suppose was an unusual choice in as much as he had never written any family adventures, as it were. But he was a writer who I loved and who was brilliant at adaptation.
Writing Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is probably the most challenging thing I've ever done, because people are so familiar with the book and feel so connected to it that you don't want them to feel cheated in any way.
Joe Rowling, Steve Clovis, David Heyman, and myself
worked on that script together a lot.
We sat and went through the script page by page by page. And slowly the film that Chris ultimately made began to take shape.
Joe Rowling's probably been my greatest asset, because from the beginning she was extremely supportive and understanding of what I was dealing with. And you know, over the course of about 1.5 years, we've emailed each other back and forth. She's made herself available, been extremely generous with her time and answering my questions. You know, she's driven me crazy at times because, since this is a series of books, you know, a familiar refrain became, you know, I can't tell you that because that's going to happen in book 7. But she would tell me when I was on the right path.
I think when we were making the first film, she had showed us in manuscript form the 4th book. And she just, you know, I know she gave it to Steve, and Steve then took it on the plane, and he realized, oh my goodness, here I am carrying this. I think he was really nervous. Here's Steve on the first, at the Mondrian Hotel, looking much younger than he does now. And that's Chris on the phone back there. And that was the first, God, Steve does look younger. Right? I'm going to show him this later on today. We're still working on the script for Harry 7 Part 2.
Clear the line, put me and those guys in the top row, okay?
And Mr. Harry Potter has his key. In the first film, I particularly remember the scene where Dan has to come up wanting access to his vault, and Chris wanted Dan to kind of look shocked.
And when you first walk in, that thing really scares you when you first enter frame. Set and action!
But Dan really was not fazed by anything. So Chris said to me, on the next take, when you lean over, make him jump.
Look me in the eye when I'm talking to you!
Does Mr. Harry Potter have his key? It did not have the desired effect at all. He just burst out laughing.
I told you, one or the other. Day 27, it all fell apart. All right, well, we tried.
I was made to look very different as the bank teller. Big ears, the nose, the spectacles, the teeth, the contact lenses. So, as that character, there was nothing of Warwick left. And Nick Dudman and the makeup effects department took care of that.
The challenge on the Potter films at the beginning was very definitely the goblins. The trouble with something like goblins, most of the designs you look at have been done. And if you say, no, it's got to look new, you find the avenues you're going down get narrower and narrower and narrower. So in the end, we decided the most important thing was character. Make each of these an interesting character and goblinize that character so that there isn't a set look for goblins any more than there's a set look for human beings. We then decided we would do all the pieces in silicon, but it was a bit of a gamble. Silicon at that point was still pretty iffy, and there were a lot of questions about it chemically that I wasn't totally convinced by at that point. Now it's very much a production line, very straightforward and lovely. But this was one of the first occasions where we were using it. There were moments where we were going, why isn't this setting? Why isn't this working? But we cracked it, and we learned a lot. I was very pleased with the way the goblins worked out, because the way they were shot, the way the sequence was done, was very complementary to the work.
Hagrid, what exactly are these things?
Okay, so he says his line, you throw them in the cupboard, lock the door, and then you go down to that the bars. There's no such thing as magic to the bars, then you close it.
Chris Columbus was very interested in the idea of the misery of Harry's situation.
There's no such thing as magic.
The cupboard under the stairs seemed all the more desperate if he was in a huge urban sprawl. And the best and most graphic way to illustrate that huge urban sprawl was identical modern houses.
Bird!
Privet Drive had to feel like this mean, awful place. And so we intentionally looked for the place that felt like it would kill any creativity or originality that anyone would ever have who lived there.
We shot for a while on that real location, and that really was difficult shooting with owls flying around, and it rapidly proved to be a fairly disastrous way to achieve that scene. We didn't finish on the location. We came here to the studio. We rebuilt those houses here, exactly reproduced them. I think now there are 5 houses on either side of the street, but it's extended in a matte painting limitlessly, you know, to the horizon. And that really was Chris's request, that it be that big and that sprawling. And that set that we built then has been standing for all 7 movies.
Privet Drive was fun to do. I remember we did spend some time looking for the ugliest sofas, the worst tiles for the kitchen, and lots of nasty pictures on the walls, and lots of certificates of Dudley's achievements, like swimming a quarter of a width in the swimming pool things.
And I remember they asked when I got the part if I could give my baby photos in. And I came in, I was doing my whole history in front of me, like my first bike, and there was all these baby pictures everywhere of me in this tacky house.
You will drag him in by the ear, and as you're being dragged in, you're saying your line. Do you know your line? You're not even listening. You're thinking about whoopee cushions again.
The oddest thing early on was trying to perform with the owls, because the owls are not actors. There were some shots where I had to look at an owl had to look at me. And the owls kept looking at the cameras because the camera was coming around, and so the owl thought the camera was very, very interesting and was much more interested in the camera than looking at me. So in the end, we hung dead mice from my apron. So the owls absolutely looked at me. They should never be on any cameras. It was a very, very interesting start, actually. You realised how surreal the very action of playing it was.
That was the first time I'd worked with Fiona. Although now we're like an old married couple now, you know. We're very familiar with each other. It's funny.
Dan, eyes wide, head up, really loud this time on I Want My Letter, and also pound the glass with the palm of your hand. Set and action. Dan! Say go! Don't burn my letter! Oh, his eyes are wide. Go ahead. Hey, Chris, just tell them to remind the kids I need a huge reaction this time from the ceiling. I need to see it on their faces.
It will actually amaze as you go in. Doors.
I remember walking into this great hall the first time and just not believing it. It was just so amazing. It's a magic place to be.
Early on in the process, there was talk about us actually shooting the Great Hall in a location.
Christ Church College in Oxford have a great hall. It was the inspiration for this one, but it wouldn't have made a good set. So we decided to build a great hall.
You know, I found out we were doing it in the studio. You know, like, how are they going to create something so vast? You know, will it be as big as it should be?
There was a lot of talk about the size of the Great Hall. I seem to remember that Joe Rowling wrote about 900 kids gathering there for lunch and dinner, and we realized that that was impossible to do. So we whittled it down to a place that would probably hold about 400 and 500 kids, and that felt large enough.
I'll say 1, 2, 3, and action. The food appears. Set. 1, 2, 3, action!
I think what's good about it is that even though it's a source of so much magic, it's firmly rooted in reality. And I think that makes the magic all the stronger when it unexpectedly grows out of something that is seemingly so real.
I mean, most sets are kind of literally all polystyrene and fake wood and everything, but a lot of the stuff that's in the Great Hall is real stone, real wood.
We built a lot of fire into the Great Hall, so it just had this sense of warmth and magic. However, the floating candlesticks were a bit of a problem because we decided to do them practically as opposed to creating them in a CGI environment. So we placed hundreds of floating candles above tables with tiny strings, and all of those candles had to be lit before each take, and all of them were on a sort of a pulley system where they moved up and down so they felt like they were floating.
It's not real, the ceiling. It's just bewitched to look like the night sky. I read about it in Hogwarts, a history.
When we did the shot where we craned down through all of these floating candles, you couldn't see the strings. Everyone in the screening room applauded that day. It was just stunning. Stunning work from John Seal.
It was incredible. It was amazing. Like, no acting required.
Guys, this one will be the last take. No matter what happens. Focus. Big reaction. It's almost lunchtime for you guys, yeah.
Quiet, please. Be ready. Thank you.
The only problem when you've got loads of people is you find that the breaks aren't as much because they've got to move so many people out and so many people back in again. Hello.
I'm tremendously kind of amazed by the level of commitment and control that the kids have got. I would never have imagined, just from going to school to drop my daughter off, that you could get together that many kids without chaos breaking out, and yet they all seem very dedicated to what they're doing, very focused, very clear, and they take direction amazingly well. And there's 300 kids in the room.
Hold on, everybody pause. Dan, take a little step back. Rupert, take a little... You guys okay focus-wise?
Chris was in the Great Hall with about 350 children, and if one came up and talked to him, he would automatically just sit down as though he'd known them all his life.
Roll sound.
Here it is. Okay, relax, okay?
I don't know how he does it. If I was him and I had 100 kids running around, I'd just flip. But he's kept his cool all the way down, and he's been really nice for everyone.
Scared? You're really terrified?
He has helped us through the whole entire film. I've learned so much. I feel like I've learned so much through the acting experience.
Got it?
Chris had this tremendous enthusiasm, which is what was very much needed on those first two films, because, you know, if we come onto the first two films and the director had been horrible, I don't think any of us ever would have acted again.
And cut.
When we began the process of finding our director, we spoke to several really fine directors. Even Steven Spielberg expressed interest, and that was, for me, quite remarkable. But ultimately, he had other projects that he'd been working on for a while, and he decided to work on them.
When I read the book, it was just at the beginning of the phenomena. And I called my agent and I said, I think I would really like to make a movie of this material. I really, really responded to it. I saw the movie in my head when I read the first book, and I saw the world. And my agent said, well, you're going to have to get in line. There are about 50 other directors who also want to make this into a movie. And I was completely sort of stunned because I hadn't been following it that closely, and I didn't realize, and then she sent me a list of the people who were, you know, in contention, and I thought, there is no way, shape, or form I'm going to get this job. Rob Reiner was on the list, Steven Spielberg was on the list, everyone was on the list, and she said, Warner Brothers is willing to have an interview with you.
Chris arrived at the meeting with a script. He himself had taken 2 weeks on his own, writing on spec a draft of the script. And he'd really thought through how he wanted to approach it.
I think at that moment, they probably realized that I was very, very, very serious about making a great film out of this material.
We met a lot of people, and ultimately it came down to studio comfort and also the person who had the most passion for the material. And it was Chris Columbus who emerged as the favorite and got the job.
I got a call from one of the executives who said, you're our guy, we're going to go with you. So it was an amazing moment. It was an amazing moment because I remember walking into the kitchen of my house and telling my wife, I got the job. I got the Potter gig. We're moving to London.
This is Chris with Dan and his head covered, and with Chris's young daughter. The amazing thing about Chris, one of the amazing things about Chris, during the pre-production period, his family lives in San Francisco, and he would fly every Friday to San Francisco and come back for Monday morning because he felt it was important for him to spend the weekend with his kids. Pretty impressive as far as I'm concerned. And this is what it made him look like.
That's the door.
Go, guys, all together. All together. Come back.
My favourite set is the chess set, which is amazing. This is so cool to walk on, man.
Yeah.
It's so great when it's lit
Set,
up.
and there's a door.
Probably my favorite example of Stuart Craig's production design was the gigantic chess set. I just loved the attention to detail and the look of those pieces. I mean, they looked as if they were made out of real stone. I wanted to take all of them back home for my office in San Francisco because they're just stunning.
Now, don't be offended or anything, but neither of you are particularly good at chess. Just tell us what.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you loser.
All right, try one more time.
It was also one of my favorite scenes in the book and the film because Ron actually sacrifices himself.
Just tell us what to do. All right, then. Harry, you take the empty bishop square, and Hermione, you'll be the queenside horse. And as for me, I'll be a knight. That's Ron's kind of moment, and it's the first time he really takes charge. And he gets to ride this great big horse.
That was really exciting, because I got to sit on the horse. I remember really enjoying that. And actually, the coolest thing about it was when the pieces got smashed, because they actually exploded. I think we've actually still got a broken piece of the, I think it was the horse. So that was cool.
Can I walk? Let me walk it with him once, Denise, and then.
That was certainly one of my favorite scenes to shoot in the picture because it was just beautifully designed by Stuart Craig and beautifully lit by John Seale.
Once I make my move, the Queen will take me. Then you're free to check the King.
Rupert was so strong in that moment.
Harry, you take the empty bishop square.
We shot that as we were getting closer to the end of the picture, and at that time the kids were really starting to come into their own as actors, and the kids delivered just wonderful performances there.
Just tell us what to do then.
Rehearsing and action!
I still need a wand.
A wand? Well, you want Ollivanders. There ain't no place better.
We all felt that Diagon Alley should look like the Dickensian world, so that was a bit of a challenge because you think, is there anywhere in London where we can actually shoot Diagon Alley? Well, the reality is That world that we think still exists somewhere, there's very few places look like that, and if they do look like that, there's always a phone shop or something modern or a grocery store that you can fix, but you can't really recreate it completely. So we realized we'd have to build it, and Stuart built it in a way that had a sense of forced perspective about it. So it appears to go on forever.
As you can see, the street ends in a green screen. So in the book, your impression is of a much longer, much more complicated street. For the scenes that we have to shoot, this is sufficient. It's a great challenge in the detail, and as you can see, there aren't any vertical lines in it whatsoever.
Getting it just right so it looked like a Dickensian street, I think that was the hardest challenge.
I had an absolutely obsessive assistant on the first film, one who was deeply into Harry Potter, and she masterminded Diagon Alley with everything catalogued, and we took all the names from the book and just sort of expanded them.
Oh, Jenny, do you want to do the upstairs bit as well?
One of the things you don't really see in the movie, each shop had a shopkeeper that looked like they matched their shops. So there was a wizard apothecary, there was a wizard candy maker, and when you saw these characters all dressed up on the first day of Diagon Alley with Stuart's set and all the props and the set dressing, everybody had big smiles on their faces that day.
John, good view here. Yep, right there's excellent.
It was a very, very magical place to shoot.
You're scared of taking that wand. I want to see some real fear. Set and action!
I think Ollivander's Wand Shop has a nice feeling about it, has a nice character. I think it's dense and detailed, and I think John Hurt's appearance on that moving ladder was a good, simple idea.
Hello?
He comes, just sort of arrives on a trolley up with the bookshelves and to top of the screen, and it was a sensational shot. You couldn't, no actor could ask for a much better entrance.
I wondered when I'd be seeing you, Mr. Potter.
J.K. Rowling came down to Diagon Alley, when we were filming that, to have a look at all the sets, and she's really nice.
When she came to visit Diagon Alley, I was told that she literally had a sort of tear in her eye because she couldn't believe how it was what she had in her imagination.
He's so clever!
If I use the beginning of one shot and the end of another... Set, Chris. Set and action!
If you took 1 million people and J.K. Rowling was one of them, then she'd probably be the only one out of those people to think up Quidditch. And when I read it, I'm like, oh, that is so cool. I wish I thought of that.
If I use the beginning of take one and the end of take four, it's okay.
Quidditch was a challenge because I was being introduced to a new sport. So I really wanted to fundamentally understand how Quidditch works. It's a lot of hours spent with Joe Rowling, understanding the rules, writing down the rules. I have notebooks filled with Quidditch rules. And the other challenge was making those rules accessible and understandable for an audience as well. And then the visual demands of making Quidditch real were very difficult because of the time constraint we were under and because the sets where some of the visual effects needed to take place couldn't be built in time. Some of those sequences were pushed toward the end of our schedule. And as we were doing them, we realized that we would have far less time in post-production to create visual effects that we would all be happy with.
This was a very unusual film. I think we shot for about 9 months, so even though they'd finished the main unit shooting, the Quidditch match was a completely separate unit that was filming pretty much right up until the end.
We were sort of behind the 8 ball because we didn't start shooting until June, and it had to be finished in October. So what we did was to make a cartoon animation of the entire Quidditch match prior to actually photographing it, and then we'd go in and say, okay, now we're photographing this shot that fits into this hole exactly. So the hard part, the daunting part, is actually creating a scene and have it cut before you actually start shooting it. And we've never done it before. Now it's fairly easy to even preview it and pre-visit and do all the stuff we did, but back then it wasn't.
I have to say that there's one of the scenes in the film I love seeing, but one of the scenes that I know if I could go back and do it again, I would love to go back and do it again, because I would do it, I would spend so much more time, I would give myself more time to do the visual effects the way they should be done.
Gryffindor wins!
It's rare to shoot a film in sequence, and that can cause problems, you know. especially with young kids who grow up rather quickly. And if you're really alert, you can see the difference in Daniel Radcliffe. He looks a little older in this scene to that scene. And of course, what was making it worse is that Daniel's voice was getting deeper and deeper each day.
We're not allowed to do magic away from Hogwarts. I'm Harry Potter.
The pressure really was a combination of post-production and pre-production on Chamber of Secrets, overlapping those two things, because Harry Potter is all about beating the clock to a certain level, because you didn't want to wait another year to start Chamber of Secrets because the kids age so quickly that they'd be too old for their roles in that particular book. So the challenge was really devoting enough of my time to pre-production and still being able to edit a version of the first film that we were all happy with, that was under 3.5 hours, you know.
Orchestra, look at 7, please. You need to stop it soon with the winds.
The hardest part about a post-production of a movie of this scale is that there are constantly changes happening while you're in post-production, while the sound crew are already working on the sound.
Change it to 1 bar, please, violins for, tell me how long. Certainly for 41 and 2.
It's a constantly changing relationship between sound, music, and visuals. And very often, the best results we only can anticipate when we get all 3 elements together and we can see and hear it.
8M4 take 371.
John will always take an early and longer version of the cut to work on, and he'll just record to the longer version. I remember one occasion we saw the cue played back of this long version of the arrival at Hogwarts, and Chris just turned to me and said, "You've got to go and put that back to that long version," because we'd shortened it because we thought it was too slow. But once we saw it with the music, it was brilliant.
What's beautiful about what John does is he creates these moments, it might be 6 or 7 notes, that you remember forever. And those first moments of the Harry Potter score, which are still being played in the trailer to this day, it just, you know exactly where you are, you know exactly what you're listening to. So I feel very privileged to have had that John Williams experience.
It's been a special joy for me, particularly in the musical sense, that I can go perform with symphony orchestras. It seems like anywhere in the world we play material from Harry Potter and people relate to it.
Good luck, Harry Potter.
I was of the mindset that under the time constraints, I delivered the best picture I could at the time, and I was anxiously awaiting. I wasn't worried about the box office as much because I knew, it being Harry Potter, people were going to show up. The question was, were people going to like it? And that pressure was significant because I knew if I failed, if my vision for the film failed, if the look of the picture failed, if the casting failed, all of those things that I was responsible for, if I was wrong about any of them, the franchise was dead.
So what are you most looking forward to about the film coming out?
The premiere. The glamorous part.
The first premiere was pretty crazy. It was the first time I ever had to really dress up for anything like that or be kind of glamorous, so I was kind of really, really crazy feather boa. It was really strange, but I loved it. It was fun and it was the beginning of everything.
The premiere was just incredible. It was just a really exciting time.
Maybe sign an autograph for me. Please in the front there.
The premiere was a huge, huge moment for them. I remember sitting in the balcony, and the place just erupted into applause, a standing ovation, which was fantastic. I can't lie, it was fantastic. So it was just a very emotional moment. And we released Potter that Friday, and the following Monday we were shooting Chamber of Secrets. So there was really no time for celebration or even enjoyment. We saw that the film was going to be a big hit, and then on Monday we went right back to work on the second one.
I don't think we really did have time to take it in. We knew it had been successful because every so often somebody would come in and say, "This is a record we've just broken," but we were kids, so we just kind of, "Oh, cool, brilliant, that's really cool, you know, great." We didn't know really what it meant.
Of course.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but yeah, but looking back, it's seriously cool.
as it's been in my career. I had critics who loved the film, critics who were mediocre about the film, and it's an interesting element because it goes hand in hand with me, and I now accept it for what it is. But I saw this incredible 4-star review from Roger Ebert, and it just changed my life because he'd always been a little reluctant to really go there with some of my films, and he absolutely loved this film. And I felt, well, that's good. That really made me feel good.
I knew it was going to be a good film, but on the scale it's been, the success, just never anticipated that.
It's easy to write history looking backwards, isn't it? I mean, you know, I could sit here now and say, yeah, I knew. I didn't have a clue. I loved it. Ultimately, that's all you can really do, is pursue those things that you love.
Nobody else, I maintain, could have started this series off in the way that Chris did. Because, you know, before you let people like Alfonso come in and shake things up, you have to have somebody who gives you a solid basis in the foundations of these characters and the locations and the sets. And that's what Chris did brilliantly.
I feel like a proud father when I see how wonderful these kids are in terms of being people and how great they are as actors. There are times when I wish I was there. It would just be wonderful to be able to have another Potter moment, because that was an intensely magical experience.
On every film, there's always going to be aspects where I go, I wish. That being said, there are an awful lot of things in that first film where I go, wow. Chris and Stuart created this whole world, and Chris cast these kids and these adults, and he helped set us off on our way. And we wouldn't be sitting here, I don't think, if it wasn't for Chris.